I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I really want to hear your hopes and dreams for AI as someone who has literally been through a lot of different technology advances and and not that's not an age thing. That's actually someone who has not that well, maybe it is. I want we could
It is. You have to do the miles.
yeah.
Yeah, no. I studied engineering, and we used to program analog computers. That would make everyone's head explode. Yes. So that was where I started. So AI was is a sort of a modern version of machine learning which which goes back ages, but the real boost it's had is because one of the things I do is I run a digital campus, something called Cube. And to run a VR environment, you need a special type of computer chip which can render 3D.
Mm.
Those computer chips are really fast at doing things like calculations with matrices. Turns out that if you want to do lots of AI calculations, those are exactly the chips you need. So as those chips have become more available, people have gone, hey, we can really take big amounts of data and we can start to restructure it and it can work really fast because these chips are so fast. And so that's really the impetus and the boost to AI, I think, more than anything else. And once they worked out they could do that, everyone got excited and the hype curve. You know the hype curve where you go, wee, the
Yeah.
hype curve. So is that a good starting point?
It's a great starting point. And I am curious as someone that has had that visibility, through a magnifying glass, seeing it all, move along, what is now possible?
So technology has been coming into our world for a long time in different formats. It always has. Even if it was something like a pen. I mean, but digital technology in particular, the thing about digital technology is it works to slightly different rules to a pen. So if you have a file and I copy it and I send it to you, guess what? I still have the file and you have a copy. Whereas with a pen, if I give it to you, it's gone. But also with digital technology, there are things like if I give you the file, then not only you have the file, but I have additional information, which is that you've got my file. So you can give things away and get more. And that's really where the start of the explosion goes. and also because it doesn't take up volume, you can well, it does a bit, but it doesn't take up volume. You can have vast amounts of data and you can look at the data in different ways. And so for a long time, people have been talking about using things like big data, large quantities of data, but also they've looked at other things like connecting bits together. And these days everyone takes the web for granted, but we've connected equipment together, for example. So all these technologies have been working their way into our lives. Thing is, the technology on its own doesn't do anything. It's just there for us to influence. And technologies, whether they're digital or AI or anything else, they work to the same rules of physics. I've got a pen in my hand. So a pen, okay, what does it do? It scribbles. It does scribbling. It has like 1 degree of freedom. One job it can do, scribbling. Your hand, on the other hand, can do lots of different things. So if you take something with lots of degrees of freedom and you connect it to something with very few degrees of freedom, like a pen, guess what? You end up with fewer degrees of freedom. Okay, so it's like I won't call it a law of physics, but it's a rule which says if you go near technology and the technology is less adaptable than the human beings, then the human beings changed in order to match the technology. Got it? So, okay, so if you're going to work with technology and you're a senior person, a strategist, a manager, a leader of any sort, unless you have a mindset that always, whenever I encounter technology, I'm going to make it empower and enhance people. If you don't have that mindset, when you try and use technology, instead it'll enslave you and ensnare you. And then you get jokes like computer says no and things like that. And that's because we let the computer or the technology drive the process. And AI will be no different because it is less flexible than a human being. It's very fast. That's the joy of it. It can collect information because of these new chips and reposition it as images or words or whatever it is, or text or voice very quickly. But either way, it's still less flexible than a human being.
So then how flexible do we need to become in order to be able to work with it?
No, we're already flexible. We can think different thoughts. We can talk. We can
Okay.
chat. The AI is
We
less
need to become
flexible.
more.
Oh,
We're okay. So
so
we're
we will get constrained. Exactly. We will get constrained by the AI.
yeah.
Well, that's so a classic example. AI. Okay. Here's the thing you have to remember, and I might say this again later of the event, but it's called artificial intelligence, so you assume it's intelligence. But there's also, like people who don't drink milk, they drink things like almond milk and oat milk. I have some news for you. You can't milk oats. It's not milk. You know what I mean? So what happens is everyone's very excited about artificial intelligence, but it isn't. It's just a method of taking a large amount of information and then representing it. So things like ChatGPT, basically what they've done is they've taken the data set, which is the internet. So it's basically written and produced things since the 1970s. So it's not really like all humankind's wisdom.
Right.
And they've trained up ChatGPT on this, and it includes everything. And so it sees patterns in that data set. And then when you ask it a question, it looks within that data set and then reconfigures it in order to present you with an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the limit to it. It's always going to be limited by its data set. And if you believe it or rely on it, you're limited by whatever data set it's been trained on.
Yeah, I think what I'm processing right now is how important it is that lens of seeing it as a tool that can empower us. Obviously, that's really important. And
Yes.
the flexibility question, which I still want to find a way to answer it, is more like I guess what it is we have that lens of it, and then we need to have the lens of ourselves, which is that we are dynamic, we are flexible, we are malleable.
Yes, you're right. And sometimes we are more malleable and flexible than other times, because one of the other things technology does is it changes how your brain has the balance of what drives what. So you've got like two bits in your brain split into two halves. Okay. Well, that's nature's solution to a perpetual problem, to realize that not all problems can be solved. Okay. And one of the problems which can't be solved is you can have chaos. And if you have too much chaos, then everything falls apart and becomes horrible. So you try and structure it and order it, and life does that. A seed will take all the bits and turn it into a tree. But if it becomes too ordered and structured, then there's no possibility of anything else. So that dies as well. So both order and chaos get stuck. So the way evolution has dealt with this is giving like two halves to your brain, and this is very rough. One half, the right bit, looks at potential, size, interesting, weird stuff. The other side looks at the more detailed, the concrete stuff. So if you see birds, sometimes a bird will see a seed and it sort of cocks its head. I'm sure you've seen it do that. What it's trying to do is it's trying to look at the seed with its right eye, which is connected to its left brain, so that it can peck at it, but also to make sure the left eye is organized so that it can see what's behind it, the big picture. So that's what it's doing. Yeah. So when we work with technology, and if you let the technology start to constrain you, like people do with their mobile phones, you get into the detail of what you're doing. You're typing. Typing is one letter at a time. It's not like writing. It's not a very fluid analog activity. And that makes your left brain get into the habit of doing all the work. Left brain is not very flexible. It's not very creative. It tends to think it knows the answers. Mm. So part of what you need to do if you really want to let technology help you is you need to stop letting it drive your complete day, which most people do. They just stare at different size screens all day.
Yeah. So how can we amplify the magic of humanity? Like thinking about
It's too late. You do.
Too late. It's not happening. Sorry. There's no amplifying.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things which you could do, which is you could start to, for example, just be very systematic about how you use technology. And I said earlier about if you're not careful, it'll enslave you. So how do you use our technology? I was talking to somebody earlier and they said, let me just close this window so I can see the thing on the screen. I said, you need two screens. And they laughed. But that's a classic example. I've got three screens in front of me. So I can read what you sent me on one screen. I can look at the other content I'm working on over here, and I can talk to you. So I have 3 screens. So I'm not constrained by my screens, if you see what I mean. If you're constrained by your screens, then it drives your behavior. So I made that as a decision that I was going to use technology in such a way that it would enhance me. But a lot of us use our technology just by copying other people, and they've not given it any thought. And that's one of the challenges.
So we need to. So what do we need to do? Like something came up for me is like we need to like decide before we do something. Like it sounds like there was a lot of intention behind those 3, which is like kind of the individual level. But what about the mass?
Oh, the mass are doomed. No, the mass is quite complex because most people spend most of their time on their phones. The phones are semi-hypnotic, as you probably know. They're also totally addictive. So they may not want to do anything different. Because when you're addicted to something, you quite enjoy it. You have to sort of decide you don't enjoy it. So the mass is more difficult. But at the same time, the world around us actually insists that we do things differently. Because one of my models, which I try and explain to people, is as you use more technology, as you get more people on the planet, as you connect them up, as there's more volatility, you find that the pace of the world, the complexity just rises exponentially. And in order to deal with that exponential complexity, it's useful if you can learn faster. But most of us are learning at roughly the same rates. And if we're actually closed in and just using our left brains, we're probably learning more slowly. So the world's more complex than we can cope with. So on a mass level, we need to rethink what the future looks like. And I'm very keen on that. I'm very keen on trying to get people to reevaluate what they're trying to do, reevaluate themselves as human beings, stop thinking about, stop cheating by stealing headlines of things and not thinking them through. I'm very keen on, okay, what's the problem? Let's really solve it as it is, as opposed to what we've been told is the problem, and then we're running after it. So that's really what I try and put a lot of effort into. But that's work, and it's persuasion, and it's involving people. So at the mass level, yes, it's doable, but it's work. You need a leader, probably you, to guide us through that.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best. Eddie, seriously, your wisdom, your clarity, everything that you are is so palpable and energizing. And I just want to thank you for having this conversation. And I can't wait to see you shine at the conference.
Oh, I'm looking forward to the conference. It'll be great fun.
Yeah.
We'll do some stuff together. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
I will.